A one particularly app that is called as a particularly a EMP app here, right? So in that app, right? So I have basically what we can call as, this is the app here. So in that app, I have created a different three particularly what we can call as three component I have added: create user, right? User details and user list. Okay. So user list, basically what we are doing here, we are getting that we are not doing anything. So we have created user.ts. Earlier example we have created a basically a hero.ts. Here we have created a user.ts where we have initialized ID, name and email. So in my user particularly that Pojo, there is a three fields are ID, name and email. The same Pojo I have created at the Spring Boot app when I am sending a request for a user, when I am getting that. Okay, so this user dot, so any point of time when I am displaying the list, user list, so then user list, basically first we will try to understand user list. So user list is basically nothing we are doing here. I have created our user service. So just like hero service we have also created a one more service. I have created this user service. In the user service, basically now we are just using it. This is a basically a particularly URL, and we are using http.get. So what is this http? This http is nothing but a particularly an http client here. So perform the http request. This service is available as an injectable class with the method to perform http request. Okay, so any point of time whenever you are saying http.get, http.post, right? So we have seen that http get and post method on all these things we have tested through our Postman, we have tested through a browser, correct? So each request method has a multiple signature and the return must varies based on the signature that is called. Okay, so okay, so basically based on the methods, there are different methods and signatures are there, correct? So basically option values is a string that identifies the single data type of the response. A single overloaded version of the method handles each response type. Okay, like this. So for that particularly HTTP request, you can also see into our hero app, that is also you can also evaluate and you can see. So HTTP client, what we are doing here, when we are saying that particularly get users, right, or get details basically, right? So it is basically we are sending this http.get and we are passing the URL. So where this URL, this dot URL, this is the URL for my Spring Boot app. Okay, so this is Spring Boot app. When I am saying operations.all, we are just getting that particularly URL here, and this URL we are passing directly to a what we can call as to a particularly you can say when we are getting it any details from the Spring Boot app. It is also running on my local host. Okay, so this particularly, right, this particular operations or this get employed is we are just calling into this user list dot component. So reload the data es dot. So what is this es is that user service we have injected. So we have already seen that di, this dependency injections. So this is the es we have just loaded here, get employee list. So we already know that what is the use of subscriber. Generally we use it for majorly for that particularly asynchronous purpose. So we just get it, and then we whatever data we are getting, I think that is a response. So we are assigning, that is a basically arrow function here. So this is the input argument, this is the implementations, right? So we are assigning whatever data we are getting, we are assigning to this dot users. So we have created a one user variable, it is a type of user. So we have already created user.ts. Okay, this user.ts like this. So this user is a basically user type, the array of users. So we have this array of users, correct? So I guess these things are already you know. Only the thing is that you need to understand here how the HTTP client works. So what you do, this .http.get, it will basically return that the complete directly assigning to a particularly on this particularly our variable. Okay, so this array number total, let's say 10 users data is available, which we are just getting and taking into this user. Then we have that user list dot component. So user list dot component, we are displaying all these things. So we have id, name and email. So in my user I have basically three details: id, name and email, three parameters. In the Spring Boot app, the data of users has that three properties: id, name and email. So it is returning id, name and email. And this is action. Action is basically, you can take it, there is a delete user and update user, like this. Okay, so every time it will just say usr.id, usr.name, usr. So how this, what is a usr? It is basically, you see, ng for let usr of a user. Correct? So we already know ng for
Yes.
ng, we have already seen it. Correct? So this is the way you can basically take it.
Yes,
Now,
sir.
whenever you are using any particularly HTTP module, you need to import that module also here in as a HTTP module, right? So HTTP module, client module, you need to import it. This also you need to give the entry here into a import here, HTTP client module. Otherwise you will find out the error, no such provider find out for a HTTP client, right? So in the same way, if you are using a form module, so you also need to import a form module if you are using a ng model. Okay, so for that you need to import the form module, add that form module into this import list. Okay, so this is two things you need to understand and you need to do it. Correct? So basically in the page, so we have also used the router we have already seen it. Correct? So we are combining all the logic till that time whatever we have learned so far. Correct? So you can just get that particularly when we are talking about so this routing part we will take it later, but as of now when we are basically running this, so you can also see I have particularly, this is the page, right? If you will see particularly localhost, correct, 8081 slash, sorry. So if you will see this user service, I have this the URL here. So what is this URL here? This URL is basically nothing but this is the URL. So if you will see, right, all the data is coming from the database, right? So how this data is coming from the database? Because I am running my Spring Boot app basically. Okay, so if you will see in my Spring Boot app, right, so if you will just see the Spring Boot app, right, into a Spring Boot app you can also see, so in the Spring Boot app you can see basically here, right, so I have created a particularly controller, right, where this controller is having that when we are saying all, it is getting all that details, right? So we have used that, which is fetching from, either you can get it from a database using the repository, or maybe you are facing this repository, we haven't covered it, it was not in your basically in curriculum as of now because there was a shortage of time, but you can take it from database using a JDBC or maybe a repository or like this, or you can also do the hard code like this. Okay, so find by ID also you can use it, is exists. So there are some operations, so this particular operations we are calling, which is getting that, returning all that user details from the database. Okay, and also we are doing this cross origin. So you need to specify because we are sending that particular request from localhost 4200 because our Angular app is running on 4200. So give, because otherwise you will get that some error related to a annotation performs the cross origin request on a, because in your localhost, right, cross origin request on a specific handler classes to handle them, right, handle the matters, right. So process if any appropriate handler mapping is configured. Okay. So basically it is very important because you are running two different type on the localhost on two different port, particularly what we can call different port. Okay. So for that purpose there is a one more purpose is for cross origin request. I will just explain it to you how you can see. If you are not specifying, you will see that there is a course related issues here. Okay. So there is a permissions related, course related issues. That's why we need to specify the cross origin, because you are running two different app. One is running on 4200, one is running on this basically our 8081. Okay. So Spring Boot app we are not covering here in this particular session here. I am assuming that you are already aware this Spring Boot app is working and it is returning the list of users. So this URL localhost, right, 8081, this is the class level mapping, and then we are saying all, then it is returning that this method will be called and it is returning all the list of users. Either you can do the hard code here, you can get from database, whatever the way is, correct. Now coming back to a particularly back again our Spring Boot app, Angular app. So in the Angular app, now we have already seen it. So when you are receiving the data, correct. So basically whenever you are receiving the data, you are storing the data into a particularly one of that particularly user here, right. So when we receive the data, correct. So when we are receiving the data basically, right, so from this particular method it is getting called here, get employee list. Basically it is nothing like that. I can change it, get user list, but I didn't change it. So you can see there is a particularly user list here, reload the data, correct. So when we are getting this reload the data, it is getting called from this ng on it. So it will just getting whenever we are refreshing a page here, so ng on it, correct, like this. So we have created a user variable. In this basically user variables we are assigning all the data. How we are displaying, we are with the help of ng for we are iterating the loop. So this is the way we can display. And then we have the delete user and user details, that is we will see later, not in this particularly module here, but you can also perform delete user and user details as well. So I have already given app module, you need to use that particularly HTTP module here, correct, and give the details into and particularly an entry into import here, right, and you need to create user.ts and then you need to just create that user list and you can display, simple. Now going back to a particularly when we are talking about how this particular page will looks like here. So if you will just see here, right, so you can see particularly when I am just using that localhost 4200, right, so you will see there is an employee list and add employee. These are two routers also I have applied here, but as of now we have already covered the router, so we are not covering here. So once you are clicking this employee list, it will display all the employee list here, right, name, id, email id, and these are the delete and details. So based on that you can just do it, this operations will be performed here. So this is also, these are also delete, update, details. There are some much more operations if you wanted to do. This is basically you can different component which you have created for delete user, user details and update user. These are multiple operations kind of you can just do it, correct. So this is the way you can understand how that particularly particularly Angular app can connect to a Spring Boot app, and you can make that complete 3-tier applications, right. So web tier you are running an Angular app, in application tier you are running an Spring Boot app. Spring Boot app is connecting to your database, so database is into a third layer. Okay, So this is the way you can see add employee also. You can click here, you can submit the details and you can click on submit and it will submit it. Okay, like this. So this is the way you can, for alignment we are not using, I didn't use it any CSS or other things. You can decorate and you can just do multiple things here. Okay, so this is the way you can create it.